And welcome back. Now with us here today, we're joined by Albe Botha, the CEO of Namibia Media Holdings. Welcome, Albe.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very
It's a
much.
pleasure, Albe. Albe, so basically, what do you think of the Career VX? What opportunities do you think it has for graduates, students, and learners watching this?
So we just watched this video from Namibia before we went live back to us now. And when you look at the video, it shows interesting careers like careers in fishing and mining. And I think that's the challenge. I think we define our world as we can only do X. And we don't realize, and there goes myself, a big mistake, we don't realize that there are so many different opportunities. And I think this is what this VX Career Expo does. It allows people to see, wow, is that something I can do? And I think there's a lot of stuff on Google and on Facebook and all the rest, but when you talk to somebody in real life terms, it really brings that personality or that personal understanding of a career out. And I think that's what we're achieving through this program.
Amazing. And I mean, just to give you guys some brief background, we had spoken to entities that also gave us insight on the internships they provide, on the bursaries, scholarships, and apprenticeship and mentorship programs they provide, which is so amazing to all the graduate students and learners watching this. So I'll be one more question. You are the CEO of Namibia Media Holdings. Can you take us through your journey exactly? How did you start? Because we had PwC here and they mentioned, I don't know if it was a brag, but they sort of mentioned that you're once part of them. So how did your journey actually start with them and now the CEO?
So my journey did not start with PwC, and I think that's an important part. I had the privilege of being in Etosha Secondary School, a wonderful school. I still believe it's the best school in the country. And what we learned at that school is that you engage at every level, and that you participate on everything. And because we were only 400 children in the school, we had to do everything. And so one of the things I did do was run the school newspaper. But my love for media didn't start there either. I was 6, 7 years old, and I must say to this day, my capacity to read books is very, very limited. But newspapers I've been reading since I've been 7 years old. So it's been part of the way I understand communication. I know we've moved on now. I mean, at NMH, 1 in 5 people reach us on print media, and 4 out of 5 reach us on social media. So definitely we've moved on, but it doesn't change the fact that I had this love. So yes, I finished matric. Knew I was good at accounting. I went to university just to study accounting in general, and then I realized, because we didn't have shows like this, there's a wonderful career, a chartered accountant. So I went back to my professor and I explained to him that this is actually what I want to study. So he looked at my marks and he says, no, you can see how I can make this. And then he changed, and I started studying to become a chartered accountant. And so that's how I became a CA, and I was passionate about it for 20 years. I worked for PwC for 20 years. But you know, PwC is a wonderful organization, like most audit firms are, and opportunities internationally is just second to none. But somewhere along the line, you realize that you have to choose between your career and your country. And at PwC, I realized that my country comes first. And if I had to stay at PwC, I would have to leave this country, and it's not something that I wanted to do. And it wasn't something that was going to happen the next morning. It was just my understanding of, if I have to move forward in my career where I am, at age 30 becoming the managing director of a company, when you hit 35, 36, close to 40, you start realizing that, this is not going to be part of your life. And I didn't want to leave the country. And so that's how I decided that, I had to go and find alternatives. And then on a good Sunday morning, the First Lady, she was not at that stage First Lady, she contacted me via another director and asked me whether I wouldn't want to manage this company. And I said to Monica, Monica, if you asked me to run any other company, I would have said no, because I've done it, it's hard work, but my love for media is absolute. And so I said yes, and now I'm here 9 years later still.
I mean, it all started with a 6-year-old boy's dream of loving media and his love for media, and now a whole CEO of the company, Namibia Media Holdings. But Albe, I have another question for you. What advice do you have for students or prospective accounting students?
Oh, it's a good question. I believe it's a wonderful career to study. And of course, there's different levels. So not everybody becomes chartered accountants. There are other levels of accounting. And one thing that I'm dead sure of is that if you've got some form of qualification, whether it's formal or just practical qualification, it is most probably the one career that is always sought of in terms of jobs. It is, I can guarantee you, you will have a job. And there are very few careers that can come forward and say, I guarantee you that you will have a job. The challenge, though, is that you got to follow your life. And most of us focus on, we're 20, what are we going to do until 25 and then 30. And then somewhere along the line, you get 40 or 50. And then the question is, is it still something I want to do? And we find that in many cases in the accounting world that people move on. And the reason for that is because they are so exposed to different clients, in our case, even NMH, because it was an audit client of ours, that you could end up running a media group, although you're an accountant. And I think that makes that qualification a very privileged position, that you have the capacity, understanding, to maybe end up doing anything else except accounting. And that's what I think it is one of the better careers in that regard. Having said that, it is sometimes, it does require the love for numbers. And I use the word love for numbers. When I look at a number, I don't just see a number, rather the understanding and where does it come from and where is it going. And unless you have that type of passion, accounting can get to you. And then I strongly recommend you don't study it.
Okay, you strongly recommend that you don't study it. But I'll be one more question. You mentioned that accounting basically secures your job, but we're moving into the digital era. How do you think that will play out, seeing that we have more computerized ledgers and automated?
And that's one of the better questions you've asked today. It is a real issue. We will see automation more and more and more. I mean, we see it in our own business that we are involved here, and just this what we're doing here today just shows, how we're putting the entire Career Expo together with limited resources. Whereas 6-7 years ago, they would require a studio on a studio on a studio, and we're just doing it with 6-7 people. So it's not just in the accounting industry where we see technology taking our jobs. We see it everywhere. The challenge for all careers is how do you use that technology to create jobs? And because that's what we've done. Through the technology, we've been creating a whole lot of new sets of jobs that wasn't available previously in the group. And I think it's with accounting the same. The less you're going to be part of the processing part, because that's going to become more and more automated. You'll become more and more involved with business decisions and analytics. So I'm not so scared that there aren't opportunities for you. The challenge, though, is that you've got to love the numbers, because otherwise you can't communicate the numbers. In other words, if you don't understand where they're coming from, what are you going to tell people? That this is the answer. They can see that as well. And I think that's sometimes the challenge, that technology is taking away the fact that people don't have the background to know where the numbers are coming from. In other words, they didn't practice the debit and credit journal entries, and now they just see the answer and they don't respect and understand where it came from, and then they give wrong advice. So the issue for me is less about technology taking jobs away than technology taking the experience away for someone to have the experience to be able to move to the next level, and that is a concern. Pastel and all those wonderful programs are wonderful, but people just put entries through. They don't really know where they're coming from. They don't understand how it all works. And then one day someone asks him, a bank reconciliation, and he can't do it. And so that's a challenge that we all have, is be careful that technology takes away your logic. You mustn't lose that.
Don't lose your knowledge, and always know what process you are going through. There was Albe, was our CEO of Namibia Media Holdings. Thank you so much for joining us, Albe. We now go for an ad break, and after that we'll speak to another entity.
Thank you.